Welcome back to my official Batman series, guys, leading up to Batman v Superman coming up next week, which I'm very excited for. I previously talked about 1989's version of Batman. Now we're going to talk about Tim Burton's last time directing Batman, with Batman Returns, which also stars Michael Keaton, co-starring Danny DeVito, Michelle Pfeiffer, and Christopher Walken. Now before I continue, this review will definitely contain some spoilers, so you have been warned, so please see Batman Returns and then come back to this video. Now hilariously, I actually have a very entertaining story for you guys. Batman Returns is actually the first Blu-ray I ever got. I'm pretty sure it was in 2010 or 2009. I don't remember what year, but I remember I was at a Best Buy, I think about 40 minutes away from my home, and I was going to get 1989's Batman, but I picked up Batman Returns because I hadn't seen it, and because Batman wasn't in stores. And I'll never forget when the clerk said to me that this was his favorite Batman film. And keeping that in mind, I'm like, oh, and this has to be really good, right? And I watched it for the first time, and I just didn't agree with him at all. Batman Returns to me is nowhere near as good as the first Batman film, for many reasons, which I'll discuss in a minute. I'm not going to try and get this review to be as jumbled as possible. I'm just going to try and go through specific points. So this film opens up with the birth of the Penguin, and these parents are just ungrateful dicks, because they literally take their son, who was born a little different, as Danny DeVito describes, and they literally throw him into a sewer. Wow. However, if this scene didn't happen, then we wouldn't get another fantastic score by Mr. Danny Elfman, who I think does a great job with the score. Now, at times, the score does get a little too eerie for my taste. Now, before I talk about the negatives, I'd like to talk about the positives, and I'm going to start off with the casting of this film, because you want to make sure that you got to cast the right people as your villains, because Michael Keaton, as we know, is great as Batman. He needs no introduction. He's Batman.
What are you? I'm Batman.
Danny DeVito is terrific as the Penguin. I feel like he was born to play this role. He really embodies that character, this dwarfish creature. I really could see Danny DeVito playing this character, even if I'd never seen Batman Returns. If they said Danny DeVito is going to be playing the Penguin, I would believe that, because he's that short and he just can appear that grotesque. And Michelle Pfeiffer is unbelievably amazing as Catwoman. And I'm not just saying that because of her amazing scene sitting on Oswald's bed. I'm saying that I think that she was great in this film. The creation of her character was very well handled. It was also very weird and very awkward. Now, that's also a negative at times, but I feel like with the creation with the villains specifically, they're done very well. Her agenda is quite different than instead of just killing Batman, even though that's what she eventually does. She's trying to go up against Max Schreck. Now let's talk about Christopher Walken. Oh my God. He was perfect as Max Schreck. In fact, he is by far my favorite aspect of this movie. I just feel like you could have made a completely separate movie with him, and it would have been at least as entertaining, if not even more. Because I love Christopher Walken. And the one thing that you don't want to do is you don't want to make him this side plot, even though he unfortunately is, and that's something I found very disappointing. However, when you put Christopher Walken in your movie as a villain, this dude's gonna sell it. And he absolutely does in Batman Returns. I loved his performance, loved everything about it. His character was so good as Max Schreck. This completely evil, twisted guy who tries to tell everyone that he's this good businessman when he wants to suck all the energy away from Gotham. And I just think that's a great subplot. I just wish there could have been more of that. And that subplot leads to the creation of Catwoman, as Selina Kyle is literally looking through his files and ends up stopping her and pushing her out the window, which I think is a great setup to another great character. And I feel like the character of Schreck is just this guy who feels like he's so invincible. He literally just walks away when he pushes Selina out the windows. I absolutely love the opening action scene. It's handled incredibly well. There's this gift that comes towards the tree, and then all of a sudden these circus freaks just jump out. And there's a guy with a dollhouse. He opens up the dollhouse, and out comes a freaking Gatling gun. And of course, the subsequent awakening of Bruce Wayne for him to don the costume again to become Batman. I love it. The signal just comes up into the air, and then the light beam is reflected off of these little Batman symbols, and then all of a sudden the light shines on Bruce Wayne. He stands up, and right behind him is the bat symbol. A perfect call to Batman. And the score that comes in, it's like 5 to 10 seconds with this long held note, is beautiful. I also really like the fact that Penguin starts to really pin a lot of this stuff on Batman, and he's able to do it so convincingly with setting up bat traps, killing the so-called princess, having her literally fall on the button. She was like, oh, I pushed the button, and then lights come on. Oh, no, the lights come on, and I pushed the button. And then in the subsequent scene, Penguin literally takes control of the Batmobile. I mean, wow, this guy manipulated Batman in so many ways. It was really well handled. The Max Schreck party is also very well done because Batman and Catwoman show up without a mask, while everyone else is covered with them, just revealing themselves. And I feel like that's very good, subtle imagery from Mr. Tim Burton, who really forgot to make this film as subtle filmmaking as he could have with his previous film. Now I gotta talk about the scene with Catwoman first meeting the Penguin.
There's somebody here to see you.
This scene still is amazing. This is one of the first times where I noticed I was becoming a man. She really pulls off the idea of being this seductress, while at the same time also being a conniving schemer. But she does it in such a stylistic, sexual manner that you just feel very invested in the scene. That's one of the few things I actually found kind of surprising, at the same time even a little shocking rewatching this film, is just how sexual it can get. I mean, this movie is very sexual at times. It can go from being a little crude to being, I'd say, almost borderline graphic. When Max tries to show Penguin all of his possible supporters, the Penguin literally says about this woman,
I'd like to fill her void. Teach her my French flipper trick.
Having said that, though, this movie can be a complete mess at times, because it actually suffers from the same problem that Batman had. So many subplots that it just doesn't have a lot of time to develop its characters. And there are so many subplots that I just really don't need to get into. The pacing at times to me just can feel very, very slow. And at times it can feel very fast. Tim Burton doesn't really have a lot of balance in this film, and I feel like that's the overall issue I have with the way it's constructed, the way it's written, the way it's directed, and the way it just comes off towards the audience. I feel like it's not really well balanced. Some of the subplots, as I said before, really work, and the actors are great. I love the primary actors in this film. It's just not that well balanced, and it's not really well paced. Another big issue of this movie is that I really do not care about the romance between Batman and Catwoman, or Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle, because just like the previous film, it feels so shoehorned in. I don't really care about this scene. It just doesn't have the added weight that I feel like it could have had. You gotta have other scenes developing their characters together before you finally have this romantic scene with them making out. I feel like a mistake that is just so big, it feels like a plot hole, is that the Penguin somehow has the schematics of the Batmobile.
We're gonna disassemble his Batmobile and turn it into an H-bomb on wheels.
I honestly don't know where or how the hell he got them, but he somehow has all the blueprints, and he has his weird circus freak guys put a little thing inside his Batmobile so he can just drive it along. Now, the scene is actually good because it tries to set up Batman as a criminal, and I love the way that the Penguin does it, but it's the way that he tries to control it that just doesn't make any sense to me at all. Something that I made a little hint in the first Batman review is that I felt like Gotham City felt like a real place. However, Batman Returns unfortunately feels like a complete contained set. I did not feel like I was in Gotham City at all. I felt like I was just in this place with all these walls. It didn't sell the fact that this was a true city, because it just felt like everything was so contained. Every set was just placed there and then just act in this scene. And when you try to do that for a comic book action film, it just doesn't work at all. And adding on to that point, there's a line that needs to be drawn here, okay? It's when it goes from being interesting to just flat out weird. And Tim Burton unfortunately crossed that line completely with this film. This movie is totally Tim Burton. In the previous Batman film, you could tell that some people were telling Tim Burton what to do, and he had a lot of creative control with the film, but a lot of people were helping him out. This movie, to me, is so completely dark and dreary that it's very hard to really just enjoy this experience and just want to rewatch it again, because it just feels so cold and dark and icky, and you're just like, do I really want to watch this? Honestly, because if I had the choice to watch Batman Begins or Batman Returns, I'd choose Batman Begins, because that movie I feel like is better directed, and it feels like an open world environment. But when you have a contained movie that isn't like 10 Cloverfield Lane, which yes guys, I love, that movie's a contained claustrophobic thriller. This is a comic book action film. When you have that very contained, it's not really going to impact you as well. One thing that I was kind of off and on with was the idea of the Penguin's plan, because it's really held in secrecy till the final act of the film when there's like 25 minutes left. And to me, I just felt like that was a lot of time where you could have actually just said the plot and then tried to just build it up, because it feels like it's just a little shoehorned in, because he writes it so early and you're like, what is he writing? And you find out that it's the names of all the firstborn sons. And when you find out the Penguin's scheme, I mean, that shit is evil.
And we will snatch them, carry them into the sewer, and toss them into a deep, dark, watery grave.
That is so evil, and that really adds to the Penguin's character being this maniacal person, and I like that, but at the same time, I kind of wish he could have said it before, so it would have built and built and built, and we would have had more development in what he was doing. However, as the film progresses into its last 45 minutes, I was actually very entertained, because I think those scenes are very well constructed, because once you have all of the plot, subplot stuff out of the way, you can finally move on to your final reveal. And even though I do think it's a bit abrupt and a bit forced, it actually plays through the rest of the movie very well, and I feel like the pacing for the last 20 minutes is honestly very well done, and at times I think it rivals the original Batman film. However, the problem is the balance and the tone and the way the plot is very inconsistent at times. That just doesn't make it the scene that it really could have been, because you have Max Schreck and Selina Kyle, because Selina is obviously going after revenge for him, that honestly kind of deserved its own movie. And I feel like at times it's a little bit unfair, because you don't really care about it as much. She never really sees him until he gives that speech off to help Penguin, and then she sees him at the end of the film, and then that's it. There's really not a lot of tension between the two of these characters to really make it feel like you should care as much. And there's something I liked, but at the same time I kind of didn't like about Returns. It's kind of funny, because I liked it, but at the same time I'm like, is that the ending of this movie does not end with a very good sense of finality. It ends with, in a way, kind of a twisty cliffhanger, but it just felt a little too weird for me. And something I noticed is that when Batman gets out of the car to go look and see if he found Selina just crawling around, that's actually the first alleyway where we finally see her introduction scene as Catwoman. Something kind of cool that I never noticed. But at the end of the movie, it just shows her looking at the bat symbol, and then that's it. If they were trying to set her up for the next film and she wasn't able to be in there because obviously contracts and you move the directors and different writers and stuff like that, that's very unfortunate, because I think she had one life left. So that would have been kind of cool to see her in another film, but of course we'll never get to see it. So guys, despite a lot of the flaws this movie has, I actually still like Batman Returns. I do think it has some slow parts. The darkness and the scenery just feels a little too Tim Burton-y to me. Awkward camera angles sometimes, but I do enjoy a vast majority of it, because it has some interesting subplots, and when they work, to me, they really work. So guys, I'm going to give Batman Returns a B. So what do you guys think about Batman Returns? I'd love to hear all those comments, so send them in the comment section below. And guys, thank you so much for watching my reviews. As always, you guys are the greatest people ever. Thank you so much. And by the way, stay tuned for my review of Batman Begins coming up very soon. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned.